We live in a world obsessed with speed, fast results, quick wins, instant recognition. We scroll past stories of overnight success and quietly assume that if it hasn't happened for us yet, something must be wrong. We start to question our ability, our direction, even our worth. We look at the clock and think, why is this taking so long? But here's the uncomfortable truth. Success takes time not because you're doing it wrong, but because you're doing something real. The problem is not that success is slow. The problem is that our expectations are fast. We've confused progress with publicity. We've confused motion with meaning. And in doing so, we've forgotten how long anything worthwhile has ever taken. Think about trust. Trust doesn't form in a single conversation. It forms after repeated moments of showing up, telling the truth, and keeping promises. Skill works the same way. You don't become good at something because of one inspired effort. You become good because you return to it again and again, especially on the days you don't feel inspired. Yet when it comes to success, we expect different rules. We expect clarity without confusion, results without repetition, and confidence without evidence. We want the reward without the waiting, but nature doesn't work that way. Neither does leadership. Neither does growth. Everything strong starts slowly. Before a tree is tall enough to offer shade, it spends years building roots no one ever sees. If you try to rush that process, the tree doesn't grow faster, it collapses sooner. And the same thing happens to people who chase speed instead of substance. The long game exists because success is not just about what you achieve. It's about who you become in the process. And who you become cannot be rushed. We like to believe that progress should feel exciting, that it should feel like momentum. But real progress often feels boring. It feels repetitive. It feels like showing up when nothing dramatic happens. It feels like doing the right thing even when the results aren't obvious yet. Most people quit in this phase, not because they aren't capable, but because they misinterpret silence as failure. They assume that because no one is clapping, nothing is happening. They forget that the most important work is often invisible. The long game asks something very different of us. It asks for consistency before confidence. It asks for discipline before validation. It asks us to believe in direction before there is proof. That's hard because belief without evidence feels risky. It feels lonely. It feels like you're standing still while everyone else is racing ahead. But here's what we don't talk about enough. Speed creates fragility. Depth creates resilience. Fast success often looks impressive, but it's built on shallow foundations. The moment pressure arrives, it cracks. The long game, however, prepares you for pressure. It strengthens your values. It sharpens your judgment. It teaches you patience, humility, and responsibility. These qualities don't show up on a highlight reel, but they determine who lasts. The people who succeed long-term aren't necessarily smarter or more talented. They're more committed. They keep going when it's uncomfortable. They keep going when it's boring. They keep going when it feels like nothing is happening. And slowly something begins to shift. Their effort compounds. Their reputation grows. Their confidence becomes quiet but solid. Not the kind of confidence that needs to be announced, but the kind that comes from knowing you can be trusted to show up. Consistency builds trust. And trust is the foundation of every lasting success. Shortcuts may get you attention faster, but they cost you credibility. They trade tomorrow for today. They feel good now and expensive later. The long game feels expensive now but pays dividends over time. And here's the paradox. When you stop chasing speed, you actually move faster in the long run because you make better decisions, because you don't burn out, because you don't have to rebuild what collapsed. The long game isn't about patience alone, it's about courage. The courage to say no to distractions, the courage to resist comparison, the courage to stay focused when others don't understand your timeline. It's about choosing depth over applause and progress over praise. At some point, everyone faces the same question. Do I want to be impressive or do I want to be effective? Impressive fades, effective endures. If you're feeling behind right now, it doesn't mean you're failing. It might mean you're exactly where you're supposed to be. In the phase where you're learning discipline, in the phase where you're building habits, in the phase where your character is catching up to your ambition. That phase is not a punishment, it's preparation. Because success doesn't just amplify your strengths, it exposes your weaknesses. And if you arrive too early before you're ready, the very thing you worked for can undo you. The long game protects you from that. It gives you time to grow into the responsibility of success. It gives you time to develop judgment, empathy, and perspective. It gives you time to become someone who can sustain what they build. And one day, often without warning, the invisible work becomes visible. People call it luck. They call it timing. They call it an overnight success. But you know the truth. You remember the quiet days, the unnoticed effort, the moments you wanted to quit but didn't. Success didn't take so long because you were slow. It took so long because it was shaping you. So keep going. Not because it's fast, not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. The long game doesn't reward urgency. It rewards commitment. And in the end, success doesn't arrive suddenly. It arrives steadily, quietly, and right on time. We rarely talk about time honestly. We talk about goals. We talk about ambition. We talk about winning. But we don't talk about how long things actually take. Because time exposes something uncomfortable. It exposes our impatience. It exposes our fear that if results don't arrive soon, they may never arrive at all. And so we rush. We hurry decisions. We chase momentum instead of meaning. And in the process, we lose the very thing success requires most, endurance. We've been taught to measure progress by outcomes, numbers, titles, recognition. But outcomes are lagging indicators. They tell us what has already happened, not what is happening now. Real progress lies much earlier. In habits, in behavior, in choices made when no one is watching. That's why the long game feels so unrewarding at first. There's no applause for showing up consistently. There's no celebration for resisting shortcuts. There's no recognition for choosing integrity over speed. And yet, those are the decisions that decide everything. The irony is that we want success to arrive quickly because we believe it will make us feel secure. We believe that once we arrive, the doubt will disappear. But the truth is, security doesn't come from achievement. It comes from confidence earned over time. Confidence is not loud. It doesn't rush. It doesn't panic when things slow down. It is built quietly through repetition, through promises kept, through small wins stacked patiently on top of each other. That kind of confidence cannot be hacked. When we try to compress time, we don't eliminate the work, we postpone it. And postponed work always shows up later as stress, burnout, or failure. The long game simply asks us to do the work in the right order. First the discipline, then the growth, then the reward. We struggle with this because the middle is uncomfortable. The middle is where effort outpaces results, where energy is high but feedback is low, where you're doing everything right and still wondering if it's working. This is the phase where most people leave, not because they don't care, but because they don't see progress. They mistake slow growth for no growth. They interpret uncertainty as a sign to stop, instead of a sign that something meaningful is forming. But uncertainty is not the enemy. It is evidence that you're stretching beyond what you already know. It is the price of becoming capable of more. The long game requires faith, but not blind faith. It requires faith rooted in behavior, in the willingness to show up again, not because you feel motivated, but because you made a commitment. Motivation fades, commitment endures. This is why lasting success rarely belongs to the most talented. Talent creates opportunity. Commitment sustains it. The world is full of gifted people who started strong and finished early, and it is equally full of consistent people who stayed long enough to grow into greatness. Time is the great filter. It filters out those who want the reward without the responsibility. It filters out those who love the idea of success more than the practice of it. Those who remain are not faster. They are steadier. Steadiness doesn't look impressive. It doesn't trend. It doesn't attract attention, but it builds trust, and trust compounds faster than any viral moment ever could. When people trust you, they give you patience. They give you opportunity. They give you the benefit of the doubt, and that trust is earned one interaction at a time. The long game teaches you something else as well. It teaches you restraint. It teaches you to say no to good opportunities so you can say yes to the right ones. It teaches you to protect your energy instead of spending it everywhere. Speed demands constant output. The long game demands clarity. And clarity takes time. It takes time to understand what you stand for. It takes time to learn what you're willing to sacrifice and what you're not. It takes time to align your actions with your values instead of your impulses. This alignment is slow, but once it's in place, decisions become easier. You move with less friction. You stop reacting and start choosing. And that's when progress accelerates, not suddenly, not dramatically, but sustainably. If you feel like your journey is taking longer than it should, consider this. Maybe you're not late. Maybe you're early for the version of success that actually lasts. Maybe you're still learning the lessons that will protect you later. Maybe you're building the emotional strength required to handle pressure without losing yourself. Maybe you're developing the patience to lead without control and to win without arrogance. None of that shows up on a resume. All of it shows up in the long run. The long game doesn't promise quick wins. It promises fewer regrets. It doesn't offer instant clarity. It offers lasting direction. And when success finally arrives, it doesn't feel overwhelming. It feels familiar. It feels like something you've been preparing for all along. Because you have. So resist the urge to rush. Resist the temptation to compare timelines. Resist the lie that faster is better is better, and better takes time. The long game is not about waiting. It's about working without the guarantee of immediate reward. It's about trusting that time, when paired with consistent effort, is not WA. Instead, it's invested. And investments don't pay off all at once. They grow quietly. They grow steadily. They grow until one day the results are undeniable. That's not luck. That's the long game. And for those willing to play it, time is not the enemy. It's the advantage. We don't struggle with failure nearly as much as we struggle with time. Most people can accept a setback. They can accept a mistake. What they find hardest to accept is the feeling that they've been waiting too long, that somehow life is moving forward for everyone else while they're stuck in the same place, doing the same work, with nothing obvious to show for it. And that feeling is dangerous, because when progress feels slow, we don't just question the process. We start questioning ourselves. We ask, am I behind? Did I miss my moment? Am I not good enough? But the real question we should be asking is much simpler. What if this is exactly how it's supposed to feel? We've been sold the idea that success should feel like acceleration, that once you're on the right path, things should get easier, clearer, faster. But the reality is often the opposite. The closer you get to building something meaningful, the more resistance you feel, not because you're failing, but because you're growing. Growth stretches us. It slows us down. It forces us to confront gaps in our skills, our thinking, and our patience. And instead of seeing that friction as evidence of progress, we often see it as a sign to stop. That's where most people leave the long game. They don't quit because they don't care. They quit because they care deeply and feel discouraged. They expected momentum. They got uncertainty. They expected clarity. They got complexity. They expected recognition. They got silence. And silence is uncomfortable. Silence makes us doubt whether our effort matters. It makes us crave reassurance. It pushes us towards shortcuts, comparisons, and distractions. Anything that gives us the feeling of movement, even if it's in the wrong direction. But here's the truth about the long game. The silence is not empty, it's formative. This is the stage where habits are locked in, where discipline becomes identity, where you learn whether you'll do the work only when it's rewarding or because it's right. This is where character is built, and character takes time. We admire people who seem calm under pressure, clear in their decisions, and steady in their leadership. But we forget that those qualities didn't appear overnight. They were earned through years of uncertainty, repetition, and restraint. The long game gives you something speed never can: perspective. When things take time, you're forced to think beyond the immediate result. You learn to prioritize what matters over what feels urgent. You learn to make decisions that protect the future, not just satisfy the present. That mindset changes everything. It changes how you define success. It changes how you handle failure. It changes how you treat people along the way. Fast success often makes us impatient and entitled. Slow success makes us thoughtful and grounded. And the difference shows, because when pressure arrives, and it always does, the long game players don't panic. They've already practiced patience. They've already faced doubt. They've already learned how to keep moving forward without constant reassurance. They're not immune to fear. They're just familiar with it. Another reason success takes so long is because alignment takes time. Alignment between what you believe and what you do. Alignment between what you say and how you act. Alignment between ambition and responsibility. When those things are out of sync, progress feels fast but hollow. When they're aligned, progress feels slow but solid. And solid things last. The long game forces you to close those gaps. It exposes inconsistencies. It reveals whether your values are real or just convenient. That process can be uncomfortable, even painful, but it's necessary because success magnifies whatever is already there. If you haven't built integrity, success magnifies ego. If you haven't built discipline, success magnifies chaos. If you haven't built purpose, success magnifies emptiness. Time protects you from arriving too early. It gives you the space to mature into what you're chasing. That's why impatience is so costly. It pushes us to accept opportunities we're not ready for, make compromises we'll regret, and define success too narrowly. It makes us trade depth for speed and meaning for metrics. The long game asks for restraint to say no when something looks good but isn't right, restraint to stay focused when others chase trends, restraint to keep building quietly while others seek attention. That kind of restraint feels like falling behind, but it's actually how you stay ahead, because while others are reacting, you were preparing. While others are performing, you're building. While others are burning energy, you're conserving it. And then slowly momentum appears. Not the loud kind, the reliable kind. People start trusting you. Opportunities start finding you. Not because you asked for them, but because your consistency made you visible in the right way. That's how the long game works. It doesn't announce itself, it reveals itself. If you're in a season where effort feels heavy and progress feels slow, it doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It may mean you're doing something rare. Most people don't have the patience to stay in this phase. They look for signs instead of substance. They want certainty instead of commitment. But the long game doesn't promise certainty. It asks for faith. Faith that showing up matters. Faith that learning compounds. Faith that time, when used well, is an advantage. And one day, often later than you hoped, but sooner than you expect, things begin to change. Not because you forced them, but because you were ready. By then, success doesn't feel overwhelming. It feels earned. It feels manageable. It feels aligned with who you've become. And you realize something important. Success didn't take so long to arrive. It took that long to prepare you to hold it. So if it feels slow, stay with it. If it feels quiet, trust it. If it feels lonely, remember, you're not lost. You're playing the long game. And the long game always favors those who last. We are taught to chase outcomes. From a very young age, we are trained to ask, what will I get? What's the result? What's the reward? What's the finish line? And when that finish line feels far away, doubt starts to creep in. We begin to wonder if we chose the wrong path, if we started too late, or if we simply don't have what it takes. We assume that if success hasn't arrived yet, it must be avoiding us. But success is not avoiding you, it's testing you, because the long game is not designed to measure talent, it's designed to measure commitment. Most people don't lose the long game because they fail, they lose because they grow impatient. They give up not when things are impossible, but when things are slow. And slow feels dangerous in a world that celebrates instant results. We've created an illusion that speed equals intelligence and that delay equals incompetence. But that illusion collapses the moment pressure arrives, because speed without strength cannot survive impact. Anything meaningful takes time because meaning requires alignment. Alignment between what you believe, how you act, and why you continue even when it's hard. That alignment doesn't happen overnight. It happens through repetition, through mistakes, through reflection, and reflection requires time. The long game forces you to sit with discomfort. It removes the excitement and leaves you with discipline. It asks whether you are committed to the process or merely attracted to the outcome. Outcomes are seductive. They promise validation. They promise relief. They promise proof that the struggle was worth it. But processes are honest. They don't care about your mood. They don't care about your timeline. They only respond to consistency. This is where most people break. They wait to feel motivated before they act. But the long game doesn't reward motivation. It rewards reliability. It rewards the person who shows up even when they feel nothing, even when no one is watching, even when the reward feels distant. That kind of consistency changes you. It rewires your expectations. It builds internal confidence instead of borrowed confidence. Confidence that doesn't come from applause, but from knowing you've kept promises to yourself, and that kind of confidence is unshakable. The irony is that the long game often feels like stagnation from the inside. It feels like effort without movement, like walking without scenery changing. But what's actually happening is depth. You're building judgment. You're developing patience. You're learning restraint. These are not flashy skills, but they are rare, and rare things are valuable. Fast success creates loud people. The long game creates trusted people. Trusted people don't need to announce themselves. Their work speaks quietly, but it lasts loudly. When challenges appear, they don't panic. When opportunities arise, they don't rush. They understand timing because they've lived without it. They know that being early feels the same as being wrong to those who don't understand the process. The long game teaches you how to stand alone without feeling lonely. It teaches you how to make decisions without consensus. It teaches you how to stay focused while others chase noise. And that focus compounds. Every day you resist the urge to quit, something strengthens inside you. Every time you choose patience over impulse, your future becomes more stable. Every time you stay when it would be easier to leave, you build resilience. Resilience is the currency of the long game, because setbacks are not interruptions. They are part of the design. Delays are not signals to stop. They are invitations to refine. When you understand this, frustration turns into information, failure turns into feedback, and time stops feeling like an enemy. Instead of asking, why is this taking so long? You begin to ask, what is this teaching me? That shift changes everything, because now every season has value. The slow seasons build endurance. The quiet seasons build clarity. The challenging seasons build character, and character determines whether success will sustain you or consume you. Many people arrive at success unprepared. They get what they wanted before they became who they needed to be, and the pressure reveals cracks they never had time to fix. The long game protects you from that outcome. It stretches you slowly so you don't break suddenly. It teaches you humility before influence, responsibility before power, and purpose before profit. And yes, it's frustrating. There will be days when you look around and see others moving faster, others getting attention, others winning sooner. But speed does not guarantee direction, and movement does not guarantee meaning. The long game is not about beating others. It's about outlasting distractions. Because in the end, success doesn't belong to the most talented. It belongs to the most aligned, the ones whose actions match they. Our values long enough for trust to form, trust in themselves, trust from others, trust in the process. And trust takes time. So if you're tired, that's normal. If you're questioning yourself, that's human. If you're wondering whether it's worth it, that's part of the journey. But don't confuse difficulty with disqualification. The long game feels long because it's carrying weight. It's shaping you to hold what's coming. And when the moment finally arrives, it won't feel sudden to you. It will feel earned. You won't feel surprised. You won't feel overwhelmed. You'll feel ready. Because while others were chasing speed, you were building strength, and strength lasts. At some point in life, almost everyone asks the same question, even if they never say it out loud. Why is this taking so long? You can be doing all the right things. Showing up early, staying consistent, making sacrifices. And still, the distance between where you are and where you want to be feels unbearably wide. That gap becomes frustrating, not because you lack ability, but because you lack visible proof. And when proof is missing, doubt fills the space. We are taught to believe that effort should produce immediate results, that progress should be obvious, that if something is meant for us, it should move faster. But that belief is not just incorrect, it's harmful, because it convinces good people to quit right before things start to work. The truth is, success that lasts is not designed to be fast. It is designed to be formative. It's meant to teach you patience before it gives you power. It's meant to teach you discipline before it gives you freedom. It's meant to teach you humility before it gives you influence. And that kind of education cannot be rushed. We admire the outcome but ignore the process. We see the finished product and assume it was always obvious, but clarity often comes after commitment, not before it. Confidence comes after repetition, not before the first step. Most people wait to feel ready. The long game requires you to move while you're still unsure. That's uncomfortable because uncertainty makes us feel exposed. It makes us question whether we're wasting time. It makes us wonder if we chose the wrong path. And when others appear to move faster, comparison convinces us that we are falling behind. But progress is not a race. It's a relationship with your craft, a relationship with your values, a relationship with the future version of yourself. And like any relationship that matters, it deepens slowly. We forget that speed is not neutral. Speed amplifies whatever foundation you're standing on. If that foundation is weak, speed makes the collapse faster. The long game slows you down on purpose so your foundation has time to strengthen. This is why shortcuts are so tempting. They promise relief from discomfort. They promise validation without waiting. But shortcuts don't remove the cost. They delay it. And when the cost eventually arrives, it arrives with interest. The long game, on the other hand, asks you to pay up front. It asks for effort without applause, discipline without recognition, faith without guarantees. That's why it's rare, and that's also why it works. The people who last aren't driven by urgency. They're driven by alignment. They know why they're doing what they're doing, and that clarity allows them to endure boredom, repetition, and slow progress without losing direction. They understand something important. Results are lagging indicators. What you see today is the result of habits formed months or years ago. What you're building now may not show up for a long time. That doesn't mean it isn't working. It means it's still forming. The danger is assuming that silence means failure. Sometimes silence means growth. Sometimes silence means preparation. Sometimes silence means you are learning lessons you'll be grateful for later. The long game doesn't just test your patience. It tests your identity. It forces you to answer a deeper question. Who am I when no one is watching? Do I still show up when the reward is uncertain? Do I still act with integrity when there's no immediate benefit? Because success doesn't just give you opportunity. It gives you responsibility. And if you arrive there too early, without the inner strength to handle it, success can become a liability instead of a gift. That's why the wait matters. The wait builds emotional resilience. It builds perspective. It builds the ability to stay grounded when things finally start moving quickly. Without that grounding, success can distort your judgment, your relationships, and your sense of self. The long game protects you from becoming someone you won't recognize. And yes, there will be moments when it feels unfair, moments when others seem to get rewarded for less effort, moments when cutting corners looks tempting, moments when quitting feels logical, but logic isn't always the right guide because meaning doesn't come from ease, it comes from commitment. The satisfaction that lasts doesn't come from speed, it comes from knowing you earned it the right way, that you didn't just arrive, you became. Over time, something remarkable happens to those who stay. Their confidence becomes quiet, their focus becomes sharper, their standards rise. They stop chasing approval and start trusting their process. They no longer panic when things slow down because they understand that slow periods are not setbacks, they're part of the rhythm. And then, often unexpectedly, the momentum shifts. Opportunities appear, people notice, results compound. From the outside, it looks sudden. From he inside, it feels overdue. That's the irony of the long game. It feels endless while you're in it, and obvious once you're through it. So if you're tired right now, that doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. If you're frustrated, it doesn't mean you chose wrong. It means you care. If you feel behind, it doesn't mean it means you're still building. The question is not whether success will take time. It always does. The question is whether you'll stay long enough to let time do its work. Because time doesn't just measure progress, it creates it. And in the end, success doesn't belong to the fastest, the loudest, or the most visible. It belongs to the ones who understood that the long game isn't a delay, it's the path.